Yeah, this is Mac McCullough. We'll call this meeting to order. And I guess the first thing we should do is do a roll call. Do you have a list of people to read?
I do.
Lucy? Awesome. Cool.
Mac McCullough.
Here.
In the room.
In the room.
Let's see. Angela Stewart. I don't think we have Angela. That's not here, so let me make sure. Yep. Okay. Kathy Zenda Wilson. Don't think we have her. Jim Hansma. Not today. Paul Agnetuk. Not today. Lee Adams. No. Mark Newman.
Here.
Thank you. Sonia Elder. So Dr. Paul Watson. Here in the room with us. Tommy Miller.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Monique French.
Present.
Thank you. Lori Upright.
Yes, hello.
Thank you. Paulette Porter. Barry Scott. Art Kale. Here in the room. Jeff Alba. Not seeing him. Mike Knopfs.
I am here.
Thank you. Derek Perry, Haley Snyder, and for Robert Stalin, we have Tina.
Hello.
Here in the room. All right, moving on. Kelly Scott.
I am here.
Thank you. Lynn Meikle.
I'm here.
Brent Thalen.
Here.
Aaron Cummings. I think so. Aaron?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you now. Thank you. David Hackett.
Here.
You're welcome.
Mike Watsa.
Present.
Thank you. Okay, we have roll call.
All right, we have roll call. So first up on the agenda are the meeting minutes from January, February, and March. Is it appropriate to add the agenda to that as well?
Yes.
For approval? So does anybody have any questions or additions or corrections of anything on any of the meeting minutes? And if all are satisfied with the agenda, we'll take a motion to approve all four of those things.
So moved. Support.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, and now we have the ACP education update. Who is that?
That'll be me.
Okay.
Okay, so as we went over in a previous meeting, I believe in February, we had a plan for going over the Affordable Connectivity Program. So we had our first meeting for that education plan with the WIC office, and that's through the Public Health Department. And as a part of that, we learned a lot regarding so one of the things I'll just start by saying is we know that anyone who participates in WIC is automatically eligible for ACP, and so that's why we wanted to help them. They do find that there are a lot of ways that they engage with people using technology, and often their clients don't have strong technology resources. For instance, most folks are using the internet using their phone. So even for the resources provided by WIC, they are using their phones to access those. And often it's not even LTE necessarily, but it's connecting via Wi-Fi in public spaces or at their homes if they have it. And so we know that technology is an issue for them. They have a vested interest in wanting to help folks have more affordable internet. And so they're excited to help us out with spreading the word and really even seeing what they can do to help people get enrolled directly. One of the things that they said is that they know that in general, you know, sort of hand holding is the best way to help people enroll. You know, you can give them a whole bunch of information, but if you're not walking them through that process in general, folks can have a hard time signing up. And we know that the process for this is actually pretty complicated. The application is multiple pages. You also have to complete a household worksheet that explains like who's in your household, things like that. There's just a lot of steps. And so that is certainly an obstacle that I think it's important for us to be aware of. Some of the other things that we learned from that conversation is that phones don't allow people to view encrypted emails, which is how a lot of WIC services are provided. And so if they don't have a device, a computer device, WIC specifically has to ask them for permission to send the items in a way that would allow them to send the non-encrypted version. So they have to ask permission to send non-encrypted emails and like program materials before they can even engage. So that's a problem. Devices are ultimately a problem. They also said devices would make it easier to do telehealth appointments. Some folks struggle with that on their phones. Another thing that they said is that their clients are also using an Amazon Prime discount. There's an Amazon Prime discount if you're on WIC, and so they know that a lot of folks are using that as well. So I thought those were important for us to be aware of. We came up with immediate next steps and secondary next steps. The immediate next steps are we are going to print and send them 50 applications and household worksheets so they have the physical copies there in the office. We're going to rewrite the eligibility level, or I'm sorry, the letter, eligibility letter to a 6th grade reading level, but also focusing on the steps to take. Interestingly, the eligibility level or letter lists the types of ways that people can be eligible, but if they're receiving the letter, we know that they would already be eligible. So we just want to simplify that letter and make it more useful. They also identified 2 posters that they'd like to have in their space, so we're going to make those. And then also we're working with them on, what are the things that are needed for documentation? You need 2 forms of ID. And so how can we make it easier for even WIC to help them get that proof of ID, whether that's photocopying their, if it's a driver's license or any form of identification. And WIC is like, we just need to know what that burden is that we need to plan on, even for costs associated with that. Secondary steps include translating everything into Burmese. That's something that we'll start working with Burma Center on. And then also they recommended prepaid envelopes because we're giving them these applications and sometimes a stamp can be, an obstacle to sending it in. So if we had prepaid envelopes that they could use to send in the applications, that would make it easier. So ultimately, I just wanted to provide an update on this. We'll continue to provide updates on the education program. But what we're really finding is that as a part of these conversations, we're learning about what digital literacy and also kind of digital equity looks like in our communities, especially as it relates to what are the obstacles that are in place so that they can't necessarily sign up for the Affordable Connectivity Program. Ideas for the future, as I mentioned, they really believe that walking a person through the process is going to help ensure that people do sign up rather than just giving them a bunch of arguably confusing materials and asking them to do it on their own. I wanted to make sure we mentioned that because as we think about digital equity in Calhoun County, we know that if we are helping people one-on-one, that will lead to greater outcomes. We heard that also related to seniors, that in general classes that kind of bring everybody together and just teach them how to use a computer aren't really as helpful as one-on-one education for people. So we're seeing that similarly just with some of these more complicated programs. Also, they had questions about where can they find computers. So if they were, you can apply for the Affordable Connectivity Program on a computer, but if a person doesn't have a device, where would they go to do that? And so we kind of recognize these holes. The other one is locations of public internet. Where can people go to access Wi-Fi so that they can sign up for these programs or so that they can even access some of the WIC programs that we know they need the internet for? We've talked about this a lot. There are a lot of government programs that do require the internet. And what do folks do when they don't have internet at home, which we know is common? And so these are the sorts of things that digital equity can really start to look at. And so we definitely heard that specifically from the WIC office as things that would be helpful in this process of really connecting their clients with this Affordable Connectivity Program and even just access to the internet in general. Are there any questions about Affordable Connectivity Program or the education process? I'll mention also we do have a meeting set up with Veteran Affairs. That's the next group that we're going to meet with because there are certain types of veteran statuses that are also eligible for this program. They're another county office, so we can really dig into these conversations and then create the materials that will make it easier for us in these future conversations with other community groups. Questions?
Comments or questions? I just wanted to amplify, and you just mentioned, we talked about it a lot, but what you said about hand holding, I mean, that is a huge area of support that we provide at the library. And so we're not only helping people navigate digitally, we have to be so careful about not offering legal advice, for example, or even medical advice, right? And yet these forms for people who are really not, fluent in that stuff, they get tripped up on questions all the time, and they're sharing some really personal information. And I think that there's something about libraries that make people feel they're safe, which is a great thing. But I like to think about how digital literacy, it's not just about using your phone, it's really about civic literacy. And we have so many people that come to the library to file custody cases on their own, to file divorce cases on their own, to get rid of a deadbeat tenant, or to go after a slumlord, or on and on and on. And and it's more and more of a piece of what we are trying to help people through. And so it kind of goes hand in glove when we talk about agencies and municipalities who are trying to cut their costs. One of the burrs of my saddle is that the city of Battle Creek quit printing their tax returns a long time ago to save money. Guess where they come? They come to us, and we print them mostly at our costs. And that's part of what the library does. That's why we're fortunate to have a tax millage that pays for our operations and all that. But we have to understand that, it's like whack-a-mole. You save money here, someone else has got to pick up the tab, and we're in the public sector too. So as we gather this information, thinking about ways that we can be informing each other about how we can support this. For example, you don't need a library card to come to Willard Library and use a computer. Anybody can come in and use the computer. I get calls every day from people saying, can I use the computer? So it's not general knowledge, but we try to get it out. Mm-hmm. So just to amplify that point is that it's not just accessing, it's helping people navigate things that they really need: benefits, applying for jobs, navigating courts, all that stuff, doing your taxes. So.
Mm-hmm. Matt, could I make a couple comments?
Yes, please.
I just want to thank Lucy and Lynn for their work on this so far. I was originally thinking, it was relatively simple. We would print, a piece of paper and send it to all of you to help deploy this plan. But really what Lucy is describing is kind of a two-pronged strategy. One would be for organizations like the library, where people can come in and use the computer and get assistance holding their hands. That hasn't been developed yet. One, like she talked about with the WIC office, where it's not necessarily a computer lab or designed to do that, where we would need to maybe rely more on posters and flyers and print material that we can send home with them with the prepaid envelope. So two different strategies for different types of organizations, customized a bit so that you all, as you're helping us to do this education, that it makes sense for your organization. So we'll take several months. And we talked about, if you remember, there was an original kind of strategy plan that listed all the different organizations and partners. So having a list of that, and then putting dates on it when we have deployed that information in each of those organizations or departments, so that you all know where this information has been disseminated in the community, because it will take, several months to get through all of this.
Yeah, I just shared my screen, Kelly, to show what some of those groups are.
Yeah, so maybe like a status update on this list as they get the information, so that, just for when you're referring people or talking to people, say, oh, I know you can go there. They have this information already.
Definitely. Absolutely.
Good report.
Thanks.
No other questions? Discussion about digital equity from our community partners.
So these are really connected. I mean, and I intentionally wanted to talk about ACP first, because there's a lot that we learn that's needed in our community. A lot of what Kelly just kind of highlighted, that we don't right now have necessarily a way to walk people hand in hand through this process. We all recognize, though, that would be valuable. We're also hearing from the community that there's interest in this. And so I wanted to share 2 examples of ways that we think that this is moving forward. And it sounds like you might even have a third to talk about for tomorrow. But I also then, the goal is to create a subcommittee. And really, I want to provide that understanding of why this is important and that this is clearly a huge need in our community. And then the subcommittee would work on this problem. So that's the goal. And that's kind of how I structured this. So the 2 things I wanted to talk about, one is, so senior millage, which is an office in the county, it's, a voter approved millage. They have funds that come in actually from Firekeepers local revenue sharing that aren't necessarily a part of the millage itself. And with those additional funds, they've started what's called strategic projects that are one-time funds that people can apply for based on community interest. And then those things go supporting seniors. What we're hearing from that group is that there is interest in doing digital literacy programs with those funds. I don't think Kelly would mind me saying that she's also encouraged us to look in that direction. I think that this is a fund that, could really help motivate some of this work in the community. There is one that was submitted this year. And so that is submitted by Rod Otten, who works for Battle Creek Community Foundation, but he's really based in Albion. He really runs like the CRAM building. He does a lot of work with the Albion Health Care Alliance. So he's very involved over there, and he submitted a project which is called, and the title's confusing, but I did have Lynn and I actually met with him and learned about what he's planning, which is specifically in digital literacy. His program is called Intergenerational Partnership to Support Aging in Place. The total project cost is $30,000. He's requesting $18,000 from the strategic projects plan. They haven't necessarily approved that yet, but at least that proposal is moving forward in some ways. The thing about this, though, and it's called Partnership to Support Aging in Place, because what the program would do is it would bring Albion College AmeriCorps volunteers, they're paid though, AmeriCorps students, they would go into seniors' homes and they would help them specifically with this, with digital literacy and helping them with the computer. It would be that one-on-one help. There's also the fact that it's connected to the Albion Healthcare Alliance is that it would also help those people have people coming in and just kind of checking on them, and then they can connect them with their health navigators if necessary, which is a part of the Albion Healthcare Alliance. So there is some of that aging in place health benefit to it, but it really is a digital literacy program. And so that's something that he's ready to run with. He's really excited about it. He feels the need. He's really experienced that need. And so if this is approved, then they would start specifically in Albion, although their goal long-term would be to serve the larger area, even as far as to Concha, definitely down in Homer, and then some of the areas north as well. They would specifically help seniors, but I think that is the population that digital literacy is certainly a concern. We also hear often from senior millage that this is a topic that they want to dig into and help find solutions for seniors, because they are hearing from all of their partners that digital literacy is an issue for seniors. So that's a program that's being proposed and kind of working its way through the community. It sounds like you're hearing about another one.
Yeah, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with, and I can only remember her first name. It's Ida, but they have a contract with the Kellogg Foundation to build technical skills and digital literacy in Battle Creek, in part of Battle Creek, predominantly aimed at African-American kids, but to really try to raise technical skills so that people are prepared to enter the workforce, or seek further credentials or education or whatever to work in the growing field of digital technology. So
yeah, and I really think it just shows the scope, right? Like there's all kinds of places where we know we want to learn more about and help to facilitate and encourage this work that the task force has identified as a part of its strategic work. The other thing that I wanted to share is this Digital Equity Community Organization Survey. This is a first draft of this. The goal is to send this to community organizations, including your organizations, the members on this task force, as well as further in the community. This is based in a couple things. The reason why I think this is a good idea is related to what I mentioned with what we learned from WIC, which is that people are wondering where can they send people for access to computers, as well as access to Wi-Fi, which this covers. Another thing that this covers is what digital services does your organization offer? There's a huge list here, but it really speaks to what we're talking about in terms of the range of services that we're recognizing our community needs, especially related to digital equity. This includes things like the public access to computers.
My bad.
You're fine.
I finally got it.
Yeah, I'm good. And then also,
Okay, somebody help me.
just turn this on. And then, sorry, we had some technical issues in the room. But then also a couple things. So this is actually a list that MyHigh has. So the Michigan High-Speed Internet Office is trying to collect this information about organizations in the state. And so this can come from the Calhoun County Broadband Task Force, asking these questions, gathering this data ourselves so that we have it. And then we can kind of disseminate that to the MyHigh office. A couple of things were also added based on input from MAC, including printing, which is very relevant, super, super relevant. And then also like phone app support. That was another thing that you mentioned. And then I think you also added assistance with online enrollment and public assistance programs. But ultimately, this would help us capture some of this information. Do you provide your services in person, virtual, or both? And then when someone is at your organization, how do they get computer and internet assistance? Do you make devices available, etc.? We are hoping that ultimately this is a form that the subcommittee can help finalize, so that ultimately it's something that the subcommittee can use the data to then help us make decisions about how we can be thoughtful about digital equity in our community. So this is just to show you that this is kind of a start to this, but then the subcommittee would hopefully work on honing this in so that it's especially useful for the work that we want to work on. So that's some foundational information about the subcommittee that we hope to create. That's up to you.
All right.
Excuse me, is digital equity, is this a certain, this isn't gonna come out right no matter how I say it. But is it based on a certain race rather than socioeconomic? Is it a socioeconomic thing?
I hear that, especially because of the word equity that might come to mind. Mostly it's bridging the digital divide. And digital equity is a way of thinking about it in terms of making sure that we are providing these services for all people, especially because we know from the research that we've done that there are certain populations that struggle. It could be seniors. We do know that, you know, there are some racial outcomes related to these topics. We do know that there are some, you know, there are various ways that it might like connect with marginalized groups that we do want to be conscious of, but in general the idea is that these things help make sure that everybody has access to the internet to be successful.
Okay, great.
So is this, so is this like, so like you're looking at, if you're qualified for WIC, you're qualified for this, would this like they'd have special internet like in a box, or?
This isn't even nearly there. The idea is that a subcommittee could maybe work on creating programs that would help us get to a place where something could be that formal. This is simply who's got internet, who has Wi-Fi that the public can access, period. This is much simpler.
About 2 years ago, Marshall Library, they went out and they put like a hotspot at
I know,
Marshall Township
yeah.
for kids to do their homework,
Yeah.
download stuff, and then Eckford Township, same thing.
Exactly.
So at least the kids in the villages can go
Right.
download their.
And if we had a way to help people know that that even exists, you know, if we are a place where people are coming for information about broadband issues, it would be really, and especially like we're meeting with WIC, we're meeting with all these groups, to be able to share with them where these internet areas are would be really good. And the idea is that this survey would go to the library so they can help us know what services they offer so we can help with that. I will say there is a program in Detroit that's really impressive. It's called 313 Connect. And that program is a digital navigator program that's kind of like the highest possible like standard. They do a lot of one-on-one work with people. When they do one-on-one work, if a person is qualified for the Affordable Connectivity Program, they enroll them to like, let's sit together and enroll in this program. They help them with devices. They have internet hubs. They call it hubs, might be a different word in the beginning, but throughout the city. And it's literally like sometimes in the back of a church, sometimes it's, and they try to have them within 5 minutes of walk of anywhere you are in the city. And you can go there and access a device and be able to have access to the internet. So there are ways to do digital equity, which is what that would be called. But, you know, really it's this kind of approach to digital literacy and adoption, because we identified 4 strategic areas and 2 of them are digital literacy and adoption. To me, this covers that part of it. It's the way that we help people get access to the internet. That's not just, we're going to try to do fiber to your house. You know, I mean, that's not always an option. So this is kind of helping to bridge that gap. And this subcommittee can really dig in and look at solutions, especially because with the BEAD funding, which is the 1.7 billion that's coming, there's a whole massive chunk of that that's for this issue. And so if we are organized and we can really think, how do we bring together, especially as things are happening in the community in different ways, if we can help, I don't know what that looks like, but the subcommittee could potentially help us determine how to harness this so that Calhoun County really is leading, which we have continued to lead in the broadband space in a lot of ways in the state. Digital equity is something that we can really dig into, and this subcommittee can help.
I want to add on to, I guess, comment to Art's question about like, what the heck is digital equity? And when Mac first contacted me a couple years ago, he sent me an email that I think used these terms like digital divide, digital equity. And I thought he was asking about the county's DEI initiatives, right? Because these words and this push kind of came along at the same time. And so that's why I wanted Lucy to make sure we included some definitions as we're developing a survey to figure this out, because it, to some extent, this is jargon that the general public might say, what is this? And so I think of it, equity is just, some people are farther along than others in understanding how to use technology, and has nothing on the surface, it has nothing to do with equity as it relates to people of color or socioeconomic status, but there's a whole lot of reasons why there's a gap, and some of it is education, some of it is affordability, some of it is just access. And so there are definitely programs that we call digital inclusion that do speak to those different populations in different ways, right? You have to teach seniors in a different way than you teach 4-year-olds. There are programs that can be targeted for different populations, but I do think it's interesting that whoever in the internet world decided to come up with that terminology, it can be somewhat confusing, because in and of itself, it's really just, who has access, who doesn't, who can afford it, who doesn't, who knows how to use it and who doesn't, right? So that's kind of the way I describe it.
I just wanted to kind of add to that support, because we know that during the pandemic, a lot of the senior population, they were unable to access digital technology, and that was one of the things that we discovered. So when you were talking about the equity, I automatically went to the seniors, because I know that was a big issue, and it was a big push for us to be able to provide them with tablets, and then we had to do the training individually, as so that they would be able to have access to connect with their families, especially during the seclusion periods.
For sure. Yeah.
And I just also wanted to add, the young lady that you were speaking about earlier, that, and I believe the gentleman, the CEO of Willard Library, her name is Ida Hill, and the group that she's working with is called Automation Works. Yeah, and so they're looking at doing some work in the area. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to meeting her. And just when I think about equity as well, I mean, there's a lot of correlation between access and adoption. So it's not always about adoption. It's not always about having that fiber there, particularly when we're looking at, if we succeed, how do we make it affordable? And that translates into achievement in school, for example. I mean, there is research that even indicates that, you know, kids with high-speed internet at home do better than kids without. Of course, kids without actually do better than kids at home with only cell phone.
Mhm.
You know, and so it's really interesting. And so you're sort of creating this cascading effect with outcomes in life and quality of life in the community, health outcomes. I mean, there's more and more correlation between access to technology and use of technology and people following their doctor's advice and orders, you know, that kind of compliance where they're actually partners in their healthcare. So, you know, it is pretty, you know, expansive.
I agree. Cool.
I have some questions for you. The membership of the subcommittee, what would that be made out of? From this committee
Mhm.
directly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or another option, because we, for instance, like with senior millage, we have for someone here who we really think would be helpful on that committee. So we imagine
Okay.
in some ways.
Because I was actually thinking, because Dr. Reed, who you're familiar with,
Mhm.
would probably be a good person to represent KCC on that one, just because of some of the community programming that we do from our library.
Great.
So that would be a good person I can think would do better than myself, because if it's me, I'm just gonna get it, then I'll go to her anyway, right? So
Fair.
that's the key thing. And then the other component, a quick question too, I was gonna check in with you on this one with the program, especially for the seniors. So we run a pretty successful lifelong learning program. And now that's at cost for individuals to come out. We don't go to homes per se, but we run them at different portions at some of our centers, right, in all 3 counties. So if there's something, I don't know if we've ever, I know we used to do something about bridging digital
Mhm.
gaps. And it was pretty popular at one point, but it's kind of tailed off. So is there something that you're seeing that I can maybe take back to our folks that's really current, that maybe we should bring that back? Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Well, and I think there's a lot of ways to do it. Ultimately, especially because when I think of lifelong learning, I know even our senior millage, they've been really working directly with
Right.
lifelong learning. And so they do have a lot of hopes for, you know,
Yeah.
working with you guys. And so, you know, ultimately, I think that we could take a look at what would be effective and go from
Sure.
there. Yeah,
Yeah, because I don't want to, you know,
right.
there's no need to cannibalize efforts kind of a thing, right?
I agree.
So
Totally
if,
agree.
yeah, because I mean, we already have the marketing arm piece, it's
Yep.
already going different places. So if there's an opportunity to assist from that perspective, because our biggest thing is many times finding the instructors, which if you can help us on that end to
Yep.
find the instructors, that
Yep.
takes care of a big part of it.
Yep.
Because many times that as well as the individual's interest is what kind of limits or changes on what our offerings look like.
Right.
So, okay, that's just something I just want to mention as why that
Definitely.
we'd be interested in
Definitely.
continue that.
Great. Great. I really, yes.
Lucy, I have a question.
Yeah.
You mentioned the, I think it was 3-on-1 Connect in Detroit area. I know
Yeah.
that in the Flint area, they had something similar, which was called 211. And it was a
Okay.
telephone,
Oh.
it was a information line that you can call, you know, to access any resources that you needed. And I don't know if we have anything like that in Calhoun County, but to think about that, especially as we're going forward, maybe a line that they can call to actually connect to see who offers the Wi-Fi access or the service as we're going
Absolutely.
forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And making sure that we provide that information, because there is, Griffin Place offers 211, I think. Is it 311?
That's correct.
Yeah.
No, 211.
211, Griffin Place offers it. And so that is something that we can provide them with that information of. We do provide them already with information about our services in the county. And so this could be an added part of that, especially for the things where, as we're collecting information, we could get that to them tomorrow, you know, but like, you know, we can get that to them as we collect it. And so, you know, definitely leveraging those places so that we are getting this information out in thoughtful ways. And then, you know, is there ways to amp it up? Is there ways for us to, whether that's working with Griffin Place, the web, you know, anything, 313 Connect, they have a number that you can call even. So there's lots of ways to do it. But definitely, if we can supply the information to these resources, I mean, even like Wick is saying, if we knew where these resources were, we'd connect people with them. So just helping to get that word out, I feel like that's a really good place for the task force to assist with that countywide.
Agreed.
It's actually a good segue for other member updates.
Well, we have to make the subcommittee.
What's that?
We have to vote on the subcommittee.
Oh, we have to vote on the
Yes,
subcommittee.
it's an action item. I would.
You don't
I
have a
think-
little asterisk on my agenda. Okay,
I think we should do motion to make the subcommittee and then see who's interested, and we can work on the membership, you know, especially for folks who might be added later, but saying that the task force wants to create the subcommittee.
you heard her. Any discussion about it? Everybody think it's a good idea?
Yeah,
Good.
Great.
So just need a motion to make it happen.
so I make a motion that we create a subcommittee, a digital equity subcommittee.
This is Sonia from Grace Health. I support.
We have a motion and support. All in favor?
All right.
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? No.
Great.
I see Paul's here. too.
Yes, we did. Welcome to Derek Perry, Haley Snyder, and Paul Agnetuck. They joined us as well. I'm gonna ask, is there anyone in particular who knows for sure that they would like to join the subcommittee right now?
If not, we'll start picking you. Because I think the point is, you know, if we just continue to have weekly meetings, we're not gonna really get the work done that needs to happen behind the scenes. And so this is good work where, like, putting together the survey, putting together materials, actually meeting in between these meetings would be super helpful, and to have a way to engage you all. And, you know, maybe you that work for organizations that you believe probably could play a key role, or you have yourself or some administrative person that could help us just keep the subcommittee organized, you know, maybe take some notes, create something. But that was our hope for the subcommittee, is that, you know, if we try to task Lucy and Lynn with changing the world, it's going to take longer. It's going to take a lot longer.
Well, and to that end, I mean, I'd really like to look at my colleagues in Marshall, for example, at the library here. You know, they're bringing other people into this conversation in a structured way. I don't know everything about library land, and every library is different too. I mean, the Helen Warner branch is different from Willard downtown. So it would be good to have more folks with different perspectives involved in this.
I would say if we could get somebody from education industry, somebody from healthcare, somebody from libraries, maybe somebody from a municipality, I mean, we'd have a huge coverage kind of in those different perspectives. So
This is Sonia. I'd be willing to be on the subcommittee from Grace.
Thank you, Sonia. I mean, we'll also work with Dr. Watson on someone from KCC as well.
This is Haley. I'll serve as the municipality contact.
Thank you, Haley.
it sounds like Mac's going to recruit his colleague in Marshall.
I'm gonna talk to somebody, yes.
Great.
I
Haley.
promise.
I've talked to the library director here in Marshall, and she's been very, very eager about how can we help in this whole
Yeah.
initiative. So
We reach out to maybe the Albion Library.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah. Great.
This is Mark. I'd like to reach out to somebody from our IT team to participate if possible.
Great. Thank you, Mark. Great, and we will loop back with you. We'll help with getting us started and going from there. And if you are just really shy and want to mention later your interests, please feel free. All right, I feel good about that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you.
Now is the time for member updates. Who might have anything to add to the conversation? Insights, experiences, challenges.
I have one.
Okay,
This goes along with our map challenge, availability map challenge that we've been doing. We did get a form letter from Comcast saying that they've reviewed our submissions. It was a very non-committal type letter. It did not go into detail about what ones were rejected, you know, because Comcast literally had 8,000 addresses that we challenged. So it's in the process. They have sent their information back to the FCC. We don't know what that information is. However, we are meeting with the FCC tomorrow on a call. Interesting enough, on Friday of last week, we heard from Comcast and the FCC within an hour and a half of each other. And so, you know, they might be connected. The FCC, they just want to get an update from us, see how things are going with the challenge and learn from us and how this is going.
So the FCC reached out to us.
Yes.
I mean, that's pretty significant. It's kind of wild that they really want to meet with us and hear about our process. So,
Yes. So that's good news because we hope to pin them down tomorrow on, can we actually get that data of what was approved and what wasn't approved? Because that's really important for us to know. We don't want to have to wait for the next map to come out in June or December.
and doing it manually.
And doing
Yeah.
it manually, like, you know, Comcast did say, you can go and check on the map. Well, we're not gonna check 8,000 individual addresses on the map. Yeah, so that's where we are with that process.
And Lynn, I would just add, you know, remind the group of the context, which is this was trying to understand how many underserved and unserved addresses we have in Calhoun County. And that is going to be really valuable when the state of Michigan does get their 1.7 billion and has to figure out how to distribute it or award grants or whatever across the state. It also puts us in a better position to more accurately describe our need in Calhoun County. So really, the group of a bunch of counties that we've been meeting with ongoing have been really impressed with the work that Lynn and Brent from our GIS office have done. They're struggling. I think we're ahead of a lot of counties in identifying, trying to match up all of that really technical data and, you know, being able to successfully send a list saying, hey, fix these maps. So even if it takes June or December before we actually have the data, you know, integrated locally, the FCC has that, and ultimately the state of Michigan will be able to rely on that. And that's what's most important, because that next round of funding, I think, is going to be super competitive. You know, that's the big bucket of money that everybody's kind of trying to position themselves to be ready for.
Yes.
Go ahead, Paul. Oh, sorry. Sure.
You sure? Well,
Yeah,
maybe
go
you
ahead.
should. So just a quick update. Kelly had sent some information to me with regards to some zip codes for some related programming at the institution that are possible. And so I responded to Kelly. Me and my vice president of instruction had kind of connected. And what we are going to try to do is there's 4 programs that we're looking into. We have to locate a faculty champion, and we're trying to see what our current curriculum actually matches with some of this work. Because the communication from Kelly was just about what are best practices in some of the counties that expand this work, and sometimes it's linked to workforce development for that work to occur. So we are looking into that right now. I know our head of our RMDC, Nathan Binsky, in Fort Custer, he's already connected with Feynman. I think, Kelly, that's the name, right? Ben. So they've already connected, I think, last week. So that conversation is continuing, just so you all are aware. We're looking into it.
Great.
Okay. Thanks for that, is Kelly.
Thank you. Yeah, when we met with Ben from the NTIA, we asked him, what can we do as a community to be, you know, internet ready, right? Broadband ready. And that's what he said. One of is, you've got to have people that know how to work on this new infrastructure. If you're going to put fiber everywhere in the county, these companies are going to need, technicians and all of that. And to have that, again, the talent pipeline would be a really big boost to help us. So thank you.
Yes.
I live in the very northeast corner of the county, Clarence Township, and on Duck Lake, and Springcom has come through, and a lot of yellow, orange tubes sticking out of the ground.
Mhm.
Are they on their own on what they're doing, or are they going to benefit from some of the stuff that this committee and what the county is doing to?
That was a grant, wasn't it?
No, well,
Like 2
we
years ago?
think they might have had Reconnect grants, Springcom. But as far as I'm aware, it's definitely not related to the new grant monies. And we believe that it is largely because of residents nearby or wanted it, and I'm not sure where the money's coming from for it. We've talked with them, I would say 3 times total, including most recently,
They're not back in the county, they're in Jackson County.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of their network is over there too, not necessarily just that area
Right.
around Duck Lake is where they're expanding. They would like to expand more, and we do think that they were interested in applying for Robin grant money, but we don't know for sure yet if they did. They didn't work through us for that, and they didn't respond to the RFP. So we didn't necessarily build the relationship with them like we did with Comcast, who did respond to the RFP, and ACD.net. But we have worked with them kind of informally. We had informational meetings with them, and then they did reach out and ask questions with the RFP, and we responded to those. So it's more just, and then, I think they might have applied for Robin grant because we did notice on their Facebook page that they were asking for letters of support, but they didn't talk to us directly about it.
Isn't that strange? I'm saying. Why wouldn't they?
I wonder if maybe a reason why they didn't was because they saw the RFP and decided not to go that route, and so they kind of just went their own route. Because they were aware of the RFP, they did respond to it. In fact, the question that they had with the RFP was, that they're expanding in this area regardless, and what happens if they want to challenge some of what we might grow. And so they were saying, like, we're doing this regardless. So that is their plan. I'm not totally sure where the funding came from.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think their message was, we already were planning to do this expansion. It's probably profitable for them. So they just wanted to make sure that we weren't trying to, I guess, deliberately compete with them is what I would say. They were wondering if, we could show on our map that that's actually not an unserved area, or it won't be once they complete their expansion. So I don't know, Lucy, you mentioned the Reconnect grant. I don't know if it's grant funded or just, just doing business, just expansion of their business.
I agree. That's very possible.
Seen that.
Paul, you're hard to hear. It's not just me.
Huh?
Can you hear us?
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, we'll read it out loud.
Anything else? Any other updates while Paul is typing his comment?
So Paul said the work Springport Telecom is doing around Duck Lake was CMIC's second round of funding awarded in late 2021. So that's the Connect Michigan grant.
Thanks.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Yes, Connecting Michigan Communities Grant.
Mike, I saw your video come on. Do you have an update?
Yeah, I just wanted to offer that we continue to work toward revising the historical legislation in the state of Michigan that restricts ARPA and BEAD funding for municipalities like Calhoun County, universities, and other governmental entities. And we think we are making progress. I keep thinking I'm gonna have a bill to show you, but not yet.
We believe in you, Mike.
I appreciate that. Not so certain about those we're working with in Lansing, but anyway,
Yeah,
we're trying.
great.
All right, if there are no other updates, it's citizen time, but we don't have any citizens, so,
No citizens today.
all right. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, entertain a motion to adjourn. Second,
Sonia, I'll support.
all in favor?
Yeah.
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time and what you're doing.